Welcome to Accounting and Finance for Managers. Here are some basics about accounting and finance, and introducing some key terms and hopefully starting you to think about some of the things that are going to feature throughout our course together. Accountants sometimes get given a bit of a bad image. Boring people whose best friend is their spreadsheet. People who perhaps are not great at parties. Maybe there's another story. A recent film, as we can see, suggests that accountants might be a little more interesting than previously thought, but maybe not. However, whether accountants are interesting or not, maybe they're doing something rather important that you need to understand, even if you don't want to spend time with them. Other people tend to view accountants rather suspiciously and see them as rather devious, with such phrases as 2 + 2 equals, well, whatever you'd like it to equal, with the accountant producing the numbers that the chief executive wants them to produce. Maybe people perceive accountants as being more concerned with earning money than finding the truth. And the evidence for that would be the fines imposed upon accounting firms for doing poor audits, poor checks of companies where things haven't been quite right. Perhaps another issue is the way accountants often seem to seek ways to minimize tax payments. Maybe you think this is fine, particularly if it's your tax they are minimizing. On the other hand, perhaps you think this shows a lack of a broader concern for society that you would expect from a qualified and respected professional. Hopefully, over the coming few days, you'll begin to realise, if you don't before, that accounting really does matter, and good accounting, useful accounting, accounting that helps people make decisions and understand the world around them, is really rather helpful. It's often been said that accounting is indeed the language of business. You might regret that, but possibly that doesn't stop it being true. The American Accounting Association, many years ago, perhaps 50 years ago, came up with this quote, which I think is still true. Accounting is the process of identifying, measuring, and communicating economic information to permit informed judgments and decisions by the users of the information. Identifying, measuring and communicating. Maybe we've been good at identifying, maybe not. We've probably been rather better at measuring, and we've definitely been rather poor at communicating. The idea that the AAA have suggested is that this information ought to help people, and particularly they're referring to shareholders, to make decisions about whether to buy or sell shares in companies. And if the information is useful, then they will perceive that to be good accounting. Accounting and finance. Well, let's break this down a little further. Accounting. We have financial accounting, and this is perhaps the one that springs to most people's minds. Producing the key financial statements, the income statement, the balance sheet, now often referred to as the statement of financial position, and the cash flow statement. Reporting to shareholders, producing the annual report, paying the bills and getting money from customers, the day-to-day running of the business, and of course the audit, the qualified accountant who's external to the business coming in and checking that everything has been done in order, meeting the accounting standards and everything else that needs to be applied. There is also management accounting. Here, the accountant is part of the organization's management team, helping that team to turn vision into numbers, checking that those numbers are a future the company would actually like to have, so helping to plan and then to control as that plan comes and bears fruit, perhaps comparing one part of the company against another or your company against another company. Trying to assess likely outcomes, trying to help with pricing decisions, investment projects, the list goes on. And of course finance. Finance has a more external focus sometimes. So where should the company raise money from? Should it be via shares or via debt? Don't worry if you don't understand those terms yet. We're going to be coming back to those. What should the balance between the two be? If we're going to have debt, should we borrow directly from a bank? Or should it be a marketable security where people can buy and sell the debt, just like they do shares? What about dividends? Should we pay a dividend to our shareholders? And if so, how much? What should the policy be? Should it be the dividend will always be 50% of our profits or rise by 10% a year? What about tax policy? Maybe that's pretty critical too. Finance is also about managing risks, financial risks, exchange rates and interest rates come to mind. Maybe buying ahead key currency arrangements or key commodities. So, for example, if you're a steel company, you might want to try and sort out iron ore prices well into the future. If you lose a lot of oil, you might want to buy oil ahead to try and make sure that you know what your costs are, and you can make sensible decisions on that basis. You also want to manage your relationships with your investors, making sure that your key investors, maybe key analysts as well, understand your business as best as they can, and trying to influence them to make them realize that maybe your business is rather better as an investment choice than they might first have thought. Finance also includes understanding financial markets, the participants in those markets, sometimes called intermediaries, and the people bringing money to the market, which is often in the form of a fund where many people have come together and are effectively investing together, whether that be a pension fund, an investment fund, or a country doing it as a sovereign wealth fund. There are different sorts of financial markets: equity markets, debt markets, real estate markets. So as many different angles here to understand. We're just going to introduce a little bit of that during this short course. There are other areas, and perhaps these are in some ways the more interesting, which don't obviously fall into one of those three categories. Sometimes it's not obvious where management accounting ends and finance begins. Capital project decisions. You'll find these in both management accounting textbooks and finance textbooks, maybe taking a slightly different approach. So this is about making a big decision, perhaps to buy a piece of equipment that's going to last 10 years. So how do you decide to spend a whole load of money now when the benefits are spread out over a long period of time? We're going to look at that towards the end of next week. Long-term planning. Trying to come up with a vision for the company and a strategy. That involves different elements of management accounting and of finance. And mergers and acquisitions. How do you decide whether to make a bid to take over another company, what that price should be, and how do you then put that, if you successfully make the acquisition, how do you then put that into action and make sure that the rewards you're looking for actually bear fruit in the end? Similarly, financial accounting and finance overlap, and one key area for that will be the treasury. This is a part of a medium or large company that looks after the day-to-day money, that plays the money markets to try and get the best deals for the company. So if there's some cash hanging around for a while, you invest it. If on the other hand you reckon you're going to need some short-term money from the market to tide the company over until the end of the month, you find the best way of getting that. Maybe buying currency ahead. All of this are critical things for a very small group of key people in the business. Maybe all three areas, management accounting, financial accounting and finance, work together in some places too. Financial analysis, where we're going to spend much of our time, is key for this, where we're trying to analyse and understand customers, suppliers, competitors, and maybe even investments. And this needs skill and knowledge from all of these three sub-disciplines if it's going to be done well. Okay, enough from me for now. I'm going to leave you with 6 questions that I'd like you to think about. Maybe you want to look these up online, but what I would like you to do is to reflect on them. Perhaps give each question no more than 10 minutes. Make a few notes and then shortly there'll be another video where you can see a bit of a discussion about what the answers might be. Thank you.